So thank you all so much for joining us tonight. This is the Solar 101 and Installer Q&A for the 2023 Northern Arizona Solar Co-op. I realize we are in 2024, but this co-op launched last year and it's open for just a couple more days here. It's been a really successful co-op, another third year in a row. So really pleased with the progress we've made so far. I'm going to be doing a shortened version of our standard Solar 101. It shouldn't take more than 20 or so minutes. And then I'm going to pass things over to Jordan with Icon Power, but more importantly to all of you to ask any questions you may have for either of us. If we haven't met yet, my name is Adrian Keller. I'm the Arizona Program Director for Solar United Neighbors, and I live in Phoenix. Been with Sun for about 2 years now, and I oversee all of our co-op project development, in addition to the policy and advocacy work we do to advocate on behalf of you all, the solar owners. Like I said, we'll get to Jordan about halfway through the presentation. We'll have him introduce himself then. But for now, the co-ops are always kind of interesting because they're open for about 3-month period of time. So we see people join throughout. And so I want to just make sure everybody who's on this call is caught up to speed on what we've done so far and what's coming next in the co-op. So we launched on October 2nd, and really proud to have the partnership of City of Sedona, City of Flagstaff, and Coconino County when we launched. And right off the bat, we did our first Solar 101, which is basically a longer, more in-depth version of what we'll be doing tonight. That was over a webinar. And then kind of one of the most important parts of the co-op is installer selection. So we issued a request for proposals, or RFP, on November 13th. And this is really us saying we've got a large group of homeowners who are educated and excited and ready to go solar. What kind of deal can you give us in order to win the group's contract? About a week before Thanksgiving, we did another Solar 101 in person this time up in Flagstaff at Mother Road Brewing. Really fun night. Always a pleasure to get to go up to Flagstaff whenever I get the opportunity. And we got to hear from City of Flagstaff and Sedona while we were there. And then around December, we were receiving all of the bids from various installers who bid on the co-op. Sun has a pretty thorough RFP process, and we check references, reviews, insurance. We ask a very thorough amount of questions on our RFP to make sure that we're giving you all the co-op members all the information you need to make a good decision. And then we as an organization don't select the installer, you all do. So on December 14th, your peers met to review all of those different bids and ask any questions they may have to understand their options. But at the end of the night, they voted and selected Icon Power as the installer for the group. And that kind of brings us up to where we are now. The co-op continued to grow. We continue to recruit folks to join. As of this morning, we're at 82 members, which we're really happy to see. And then this particular co-op will close on Friday, actually. So if you've got a friend or a neighbor who's a straggler, we would love to have them join the co-op, and anybody can still join until Friday. I already mentioned it briefly, but I really do appreciate our partnerships with the local community. We don't do co-ops unless we have anchor partners who can help us design the co-op to meet that community's needs. This is the third year in a row where we've gotten to work with these three particular partners, and they've been really wonderful assets to help us plan the co-op. They help us with press when we get it. They help us host and orchestrate in-person events, and really are just wonderful, amazing people to work with. And I really appreciate their help with this co-op. So if you're new, Solar United Neighbors, we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We have field staff in 13 different states now, as well as DC and Puerto Rico. We essentially help people go solar, and we represent the interests of solar owners at all levels of government. We ourselves aren't an installer of solar. In fact, we're a vendor neutral 501c3 organization, but we focus on consumer advocacy, solar education, and outreach in the community. In brief, our mission is to help people go solar, join together, and fight for their energy rights. And we've been doing that since 2007 when our first co-op launched in Washington, D.C. And since that time, we've been able to help more than 8,500 families across the US go solar. Altogether, that's more than 72 megawatts of renewable energy that's on the grid today. And again, altogether, our members are helping to avoid almost 1 million metric tons of CO2. I bet we'll hit that this year. We've been in Arizona since 2019, and in that time helped more than 500 families go solar through the organization. Just in Arizona, we've installed more than 4 megawatts of solar in the state. And our members collectively have spent more than $12 million on their solar systems. Over the lifespan of those systems, though, they're going to save more than $22 million, which is a really awesome figure to see. And all of this solar activity has helped to contribute to more than 74 jobs in the solar industry in Arizona. And then just our members have helped to offset close to 60,000 metric tons of CO2 due to their installations. I mentioned it briefly, but this is our third co-op in this particular area. Our first two are actually the largest and most successful co-ops we've ever had in Arizona. It's really fun to work up in Flagstaff because there's such an appetite and passion for sustainability and wanting to invest in solar because you all understand how it works and the benefits of it. So it's always a joy getting to do this co-op. Done several others across the state of Arizona and always looking to expand this map if you know of other partners in different parts of the state that we could work with. But this year we will launch another Northern Arizona co-op sometime in late 2024. And then we've got a couple others planned down in the Phoenix Valley and Tucson as well. So again, this is just my section of the presentation. I'll be brief and then Jordan will take it over around 6:30. But we'll start with solar technology. So how do solar panels work? The short answer is, to me, it feels like magic. It honestly still does. Every time I see one, it's really, really such a cool feeling to get them see and powering a home. But in reality, when we're talking about solar tonight, we're talking about photovoltaics or PV cells. Solar panels are made up of semiconductor materials, mostly silicon, but some other materials in there as well. And when photons from sunlight hit the solar cells, it dislodges those electrons and creates a flow of electricity. You may have heard of solar thermal or solar hot water heating, and those technologies still exist today. But right now, the vast majority of the market is made up of PV solar, and that's what we'll be focusing on tonight. Like I said, each panel is made up of individual solar cells that are made of silicon and some other semiconductor materials, usually about 60 to 70 cells in any given panel, sandwiched between two glass frames. Solar panel is also referred to as a module, same thing. And when you put several solar panels together in a row like this, we call that a solar array. Let's talk briefly about how the system gets attached to your roof. What you as a consumer need to know is that there's generally a solution for most types of roofs to get solar. Pictured here is sort of the typical asphalt shingle roof where the rails are screwed onto the roof and then the solar panels are clipped onto the beams. But if you have a metal roof or different types of roof, certainly solar can work as well. It just might look a little bit differently in how it's attached. And this may be particularly relevant in rural parts of Coconino County where folks have lots more land, but ground-mounted solar can certainly be an option for people through the co-op if they'd like. We definitely recommend if you can install rooftop solar, you should go that route, in particular just because there are a variety of fixed costs associated with ground-mounted solar. You've got to build that structure that hooks it into the ground. You may need to lay some extra conduit or wiring, and there can be some extra costs associated with that. But for some people, they may have too much shading on their roof. Their roof is really old or irreplaceable for whatever reason. And if you've got lots of space and lots of land, then ground-mounted solar might be something you need to consider. And then you need an inverter to take that direct current DC energy from the solar panel and invert it into AC or alternating current so that your home and your appliances in your home can use that power. There's essentially two different types of inverters. String inverters string everything, all the panels together through one central box. These work really well for simpler installations where there's just one or two arrays and not a lot of shade. Microinverters are doing the same thing, but just on the individual panel level. Microinverters can improve the overall efficiency of a solar system by reducing power losses caused by shading or other factors. They can also offer some greater flexibility, especially helpful for more complicated installations where it's not just like one single row. You don't need to know, I definitely need this type of inverter or I want this type of inverter. Your installer, in this case, Icon Power, is going to have a preference based on your home and your type of installation. But if you really want to get into details, I'm sure Jordan would love to talk to you about that. And then to connect the solar to your home's electricity panel, it's usually a pretty simple connection. Most homes aren't going to need an electric panel upgrade, but some do, especially older homes. So it's good to think about that going into it. We always ask installers when they bid on our co-ops, how much does a service panel upgrade cost? Because it's really helpful for you all to have that information going into it. Also, thankfully, kind of side note, part of the Inflation Reduction Act, there are some tax credits and rebates available to help pay for the cost of a service panel upgrade if it's associated with solar. And we'd love to help talk to you about that. And then just some basic terminology to make sure everybody's caught up to speed. A kilowatt is a unit of power. So it's used to describe the size of a system in 1,000-watt increments. So 1,000 watts is 1 kilowatt. And see here on the screen, there's 10 different panels. They're each 350-watt panels. So it's 4,200 kilowatts. We'd call that a 4.2 kilowatt solar array. Kilowatt hours, they're used to describe a unit of energy. So that's what you see on your electricity bill. It describes the amount of electricity that your system is producing, also the amount of electricity that you may purchase or consume from APS. And in Arizona, we typically see the average system size between 7 and 8 kilowatts for most households. All right, so connecting everything together, you've got your beautiful solar panels installed on your roof. They are absorbing sunlight and creating a flow of electricity. Your inverter is inverting that energy from DC to AC, direct current to alternating current. And then your electrical panel, I kind of think of it as the brains of the whole operation. So it's directing power where it needs to go, when it needs to go. And then solar owners will have a bidirectional utility meter. So not only can the meter read how much energy you're purchasing from APS, but also be able to measure any excess solar energy that you're feeding back to the grid. Really briefly on APS solar rate plans, if you're a solar customer, you have two basic plans to choose from. They're both time of use, so the cost of electricity that you consume is going to vary depending on the time of day, but also the time of year. This is similar if you already have a time of use APS plan. On here, you'll see a charge for on-peak energy. That's what, this is what it costs for you to purchase electricity if your system is not producing what you need. And that's that higher cost electricity from between 4 and 7 p.m. Off-peak energy is cheaper, so that's anything you use outside of those hours. And then the plan on the right has a demand charge, and this is a single charge you get per month based on the highest single hour of usage you use during on-peak hours. And if it's under 7 kilowatts, it'll be about $17 on your bill. The solar export rate credit, that's essentially what APS is paying you for any solar that you feed back to the grid. So if you're not home and your system's producing a lot of electricity, your home's not using it, it's going back onto the grid, your neighbors are using it, APS is selling that back to folks. So they're compensating you right now at a flat rate of 7.62 cents a kilowatt hour. And of course, there's going to be some various service fees and taxes that you'll see on your bill as well. And then what makes a good site for solar? The orientation of your roof is always going to be really important here. South facing is going to be the best site for solar. That's where you'll generate the most amount of electricity and really be able to see the most amount of benefits on your bill. But a west facing solar system can also be really advantageous, especially when we're thinking about those peak price periods that APS has. So if you have a solar system on the west side of your home, as the sun is setting, around 4 to 7 p.m., especially right now, your system's producing a lot more electricity. That's going to help you save by not having to pay those higher on-peak prices. So southwest, east can also work really well, but definitely don't recommend putting solar on the north side of your roof. And then it's important to have little or no shading, just to make sure that your system isn't being blocked, so that's producing as much as it can. If you've got a really big tree or something in your yard, you may want to consider trimming it. If that's not an option, solar might not be the best route for you, or you may want to look into ground-mounted solar if that's an option. And then you'll definitely need enough unobstructed space on your roof to handle the solar panels. Most panels are around 6 feet by 3.5 feet. So think about it, you're putting a decent amount of them on your roof. You need enough space up there. When you sign up for our co-op, which most of you I assume probably already are, we do a quick satellite roof review to make sure that you have enough space on your roof. It's not majorly shaded, it's facing the right way. It's really kind of good free pre-screening service that we offer. But again, if you have any really specific questions about that, Icon Power would love to talk to you about it. Really quickly on batteries, we get this asked a lot, like what happens if the grid goes down? Is my solar going to work? So if there is a power outage, APS shuts the power down, your solar system is going to shut off automatically. And this is really a safety mechanism built into the inverter. And it's really built in to protect utility workers. If there's a downed power line somewhere on a road, APS workers are out working on that line. They don't want any solar energy flowing from those lines that could, potentially electrocute somebody. So if you want to have power when the grid is down, you may want to consider battery storage. If you have frequent utility outages and need a source of backup power, battery can be a really good option for you. Another reason that folks look into batteries if they need to power critical loads at home, think things like medical equipment, oxygen tanks, well pumps, things that you'd be really missing if the power went out. General emergency and disaster preparedness for folks who want to plan and be prepared in case there's an outage. And increasingly, we are seeing folks use batteries as somewhat of a tool to help them save a little bit of money during those peak prices. This is Amy. She went solar through one of our Phoenix co-ops, and she programs her battery to kick in during those more expensive peak hours, and then it's recharged by her solar system the next day. I will say batteries are still very expensive, and so we don't really view them as a money-saving tool right now, but if you do have battery storage, it can help offset some of those prices. And then last section on this are frequently asked questions. Typical installation, warranties. Typical installation is going to come with 3 different types of warranties. So a power production warranty, this is usually a 25-year warranty from the solar panel manufacturer, which guarantees that by year 25, the panels are still going to be producing at a level that they were on year 1. So for example, we might see a 25-year, 90% power production warranty. So on year 25, the manufacturer guarantees that those panels are still going to be producing at least 90% of what they did on year 1. You'll also have a parts warranty that comes with your installation that covers the panels, inverters, any other physical materials involved, and they can range anywhere from 10 to 25 years for the parts. And then a labor warranty that covers specifically any roof penetrations or work done by the installation company. Those can also vary, but usually we see anywhere from 10 to 25 years for labor warranties. To talk about homeowners insurance, when you add solar to your home, it's always a good idea to let your insurance company know. Most people don't see any sort of rate increases, in part because most companies see solar somewhat as an asset because it does provide a level of protection for your roof and can actually extend some of the life of your roof. If you do see an increase in your homeowner's insurance, I would definitely ask why, and it may be worth shopping around for another option. And then maintenance. Good thing about solar is most solar systems are low maintenance. They're not no maintenance, but they're very low maintenance. Normal precipitation, rain or snow is going to keep them clean. If there's a really large dust storm, which probably affects us more down in Phoenix, maybe a little bit, but if there's significant dust on the panels, it's a good idea to call a cleaning company just because that can impede their ability to produce as much energy as they would if there was no dust. Every few years, it's always a good idea to have a visual inspection done of the system just to make sure that everything is working as it should. Nowadays, most solar installations come with a tracking app that you can just use your smartphone and see how much energy you're producing in real time. That's really helpful because if a panel isn't working or something's going wrong, you can know because you'll be alerted to it and get somebody out there to fix it. How long will your systems last? Like I mentioned with the warranties, most solar panels are, warranted for at least 25 years, but they'll last longer than that if they're taken care of. I've seen panels on homes that have been at least 35 years old and they're still producing power. They just are going to degrade in efficiency over time. If you live in a homeowner's insurance, good thing is we live in Arizona and there's a law that says HOAs cannot block you from adding solar to your home. They are allowed to put in some sort of design review processes, but there's actually been an appeals court decision that says they cannot outright stop you from installing solar. If you do live in an HOA and run into any issues, please talk to me. I would love to help you out with that. Finally, if you are in a historic district, always just check the district guidelines. They're going to vary quite a bit from district to district. Some of the ones in the valley, for example, have restrictions where the panels can't be visible from the main street, but it's okay if they're in the backyard. So just always good to check those specific guidelines to make sure you're not jeopardizing any sort of tax benefits associated with that. I've got just about like 5 minutes left. Any quick questions though? I know I just covered a lot of information while it's fresh on your mind. All right, seeing none. I'm gonna go ahead and move on to the economics and financing of solar. So solar really is increasingly affordable. It's been really awesome to see the prices of solar fall dramatically over the past 40 years, but even in just the past 10, 15 years, we've seen some pretty substantial decreases. This chart on the right is the per watt price of solar, usually like how we tend to price solar systems. So, pre-1980s, there were solar systems that were over $100 a watt, very, very expensive solar systems that only the very wealthiest of homes could afford. Today, you can find rooftop solar for under $4 a watt, even cheaper in some cases. So it really is opened up to more households than it ever has been before. Still has a really great return on investment, particularly if you're an APS customer. And the federal tax credits that have been extended because of the IRA, making it even more affordable to go solar. That tax credit I mentioned, thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act, has been extended and expanded to the full 30% until the end of 2032. It was scheduled to decline and ultimately fade out this year, but thankfully that is available to you now. This is a tax credit, so you'll need to file, if you go solar this year, you'll file on next year's taxes and receive 30% off the total cost of installing solar. The state of Arizona also offers a 25% state tax credit, but it's capped at $1,000. So most people are able to just claim $1,000. We've also have a law that says if adding solar to your home increases your property value, that amount can increase your property taxes, which is really nice. And then we also don't pay sales taxes on solar here in Arizona. And then on the Inflation Reduction Act, of course, we're mostly focused on the solar pieces of that law. But if you're thinking about getting some electrical work done to your home, you may also be thinking about adding an EV charger, or maybe you're getting a battery storage. Maybe you do need an electric panel upgrade, or you're looking to switch from a gas stove to an electric stove. If you're thinking about any of those things, there may be some tax credits and rebates available for you. Some of these depend on income and some of them don't. I would just encourage you, if you are looking to add a new heat pump, for example, or your stove is going out this year, definitely look into which brands and what your income level is, because you may be able to qualify for some pretty significant help paying for many of these things. And then finally, to touch on financing your system. Of course, if you're able to pay cash up front, that's going to be the highest upfront cost, but will maximize your savings over the long term. I'll talk about loans a little bit on this slide, actually, but apologies. Yeah, my slides are a little mixed up because this is a little bit of a shortened session. So this is a slide that talks about loans. Important thing for you to know if you're looking to finance your system is that you can finance through your installer, but you don't have to. So most installers, Icon included, they have third-party finance companies that they work with, and it's really convenient. They offer good rates that you can, simplifies the process. You're working with one company from start to finish. But we're always just going to encourage folks to shop around. You may be able to get a slightly better rate at your local bank or credit union. And Solar United Neighbors members also have access to two national credit unions, the Clean Energy Credit Union and Community First. So if you are looking to finance your system, always good to just get at least a couple different options to compare. And again, if you need any help with that, we're here for it. Right, and then I just have, I think, 2 slides here on the co-op, and then that's it for me. So Solar United Neighbors, we run more than 300 of these co-ops across the US, and it's really become a well-oiled machine that we consistently see positive results from. Like I said, this is our 15th in the state and our 3rd in this particular area. Some of the benefits of going solar through a co-op is, first, we aggregate lots of consumers, so everybody goes solar at the same time through one installer. This helps you save money on your installation since the group is getting a bulk deal. We also help support you through the process. We're a nonprofit, we're unbiased here. We want to help you do what's best for you. And so we're not just going to try to sell you something. If you have any questions or technical questions, financing questions, we want to help you through that process. And even after installation, if something goes wrong and you're having difficulty getting in touch with somebody, we would love to help you out with that. Think of us as kind of your fallback throughout the entire process. We're of course going to connect you with your fellow solar enthusiasts. We'll be doing events and happy hours, lobbying days throughout this year that I hope you'll consider joining. And finally, we're going to connect you with other solar advocates that will help you have a broader impact on the solar movement nationwide. I kind of touched on the schedule and the processes at the very beginning, so I'm not going to go over this. If anybody has any questions, though, I'd be happy to answer that for you. But if you haven't signed up yet, like I said, the co-op is open until Friday. Please share this link with anybody you know who might be thinking about going solar. This is a really awesome time to do that, and the co-op is a really great rate in order to do so. Otherwise, I would love to hand it over to Jordan to introduce himself, and then over to you all to ask your questions.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Adrian. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound good.
Awesome. Happy to be here. Appreciate the time. My name's Jordan Bastian. I'm based here in Phoenix, and we've loved working with Solar United Neighbors. It's probably one of the best ways to go solar. He kind of mentioned the buying power of what Solar United Neighbors does when you join the co-op. If you gathered 100 of your friends and said, "Hey, we all want to go solar. What kind of deal can you give us?" That's the effect that Solar United Neighbors has, and like you mentioned, they're unbiased, and so the selection committee goes through the bids and does a lot of the work for those that join the group to sift through different offerings and what could be best. I personally met with everyone that was on the selection committee. All of them are moving forward with getting solar with Icon Power. And Adrian, correct me if I'm wrong, I forget. I think this is either our 9th, maybe 10th time being selected for the installer working with Solar United Neighbors within Arizona. And we've done a couple in Texas as well. And the reason I mentioned, it's one of the best ways to go solar. Like most people in Arizona generally have been interested in solar. It's just been really expensive in the past, and other options might have not been great. But a big expense for solar companies in general is just marketing and getting leads. And it's been pretty saturated, and there's a lot of misleading advertisements for solar as well. Some of you guys might have seen YouTube ads that say, "Don't buy solar, it's free from the federal government." And which is not the case. Obviously, there's a federal government tax credit that helps cover the cost. But a lot of people might have been duped in thinking, okay, I'm going to get free solar, and that's not the case. So marketing is a big expense. And so when we can have access to people who are genuinely interested in solar, that cuts a big cost out of us that ends up being pushed on to the customer, because you guys get to save a lot by joining the group. Not just on the solar, but also there's other. We wanted to be aggressive and competitive for the group to be selected. Not just price is obviously one variable, but also offering a quality customer service as well. I think a lot of times, if you guys know anyone that's had solar and been frustrated, it could be for a number of reasons. A big part of the solar industry, the way it works is there's sales and solar marketing companies, and they're the ones that do all the work to get the lead and meet with people and sign them up to go solar. And then what happens is that lead or that person that goes solar or signs up then gets passed along to the installer. And if you're financing it through that installer, then there's the bank that's obviously involved as well. So if something goes wrong, which could be the case, there's a sales company, an installation company, and a finance company. And so who do you call? And so a lot of people get frustrated that, well, I called my sales company, but they told me I got to call the installer, or vice versa, right? And solar is a construction project, so there could be, the APS could kick back the plans and say, hey, make this minor correction, or the city could kick back the plans, or could be a failed inspection, or we could make a mistake on our end. So Icon Power, we're definitely not perfect, but we're the sales company, we're the installation company, and we're the service and maintenance company. So my cheesy joke for people is it's easier to choke one neck than it is to choke three. And so if something does go wrong, which we'll make mistakes, but we'll own it and make sure it's fixed and corrected so that we have happy customers. Because right now there's less than 10% of homes in Arizona that do have solar. And so there's a big wave, in my opinion, coming over the next 5 to 10 to 15 years of homes that are going to continue to get solar more and more every year. And more people are going to rely on their friends or neighbors or coworkers that have it and ask who they went solar with. And the companies that do it the right way and have good service, not just, you know, a good price, but good quality of installation, as well as good service after the fact, are the ones going to stick around and get a lot of business in the future. So that's one thing, is we wanted to give a competitive price, but also we wanted to make sure that people know that we're going to be around, we're going to offer good service. Not, you know, once the solar is up and installed and working, we've been paid, but there's a 20-year warranty on the labor. It's normally 10, so we doubled that to 20 years for co-op members, so that in the future, any type of service, when we send out a technician, there's no cost in the future for that. There's a discount, of course, on the panels, but also on main electrical upgrades, as well as the batteries, that we gave a discount on a lot of these products. One of my favorite things about going solar is, whether someone gets solar or not, we're kind of already paying for it, because we pay APS and we pay for our taxes. And so it's using money that you pay each month and each year that you're already spending, and you take that money and reallocate it towards purchasing solar to now generate your own power, rather than APS generating power and charging you for it. You're now generating your own power that you paid for, and it's more of an asset rather than renting power from the utility. Now, you're not disconnecting from APS. As Adrian mentioned, there's a export rate, which is 7.6 cents. So if you overproduce during the day, which for homes in the Flagstaff area, you're going to produce in general more in the spring and maybe the summer months, when the sun stays out a lot longer and your usage isn't crazy high like it is down here in Phoenix. And in the winter months, from, you know, end of October to end of February, is when the panel production will be less, because the sun goes down earlier. And so you'll probably buy more from APS in those winter months than the solar would produce. In the months where you overproduce and pay and sell more to APS, you could potentially have a negative statement those months that could carry forward to future months. So when you meet with one of our energy consultants, we look at how much electricity you've been using. If you haven't been there a whole year, we can use exactly what you use since you've been in the house, and use that data to customize the system for your use. And not only that, but also if there's any future changes, whether someone's going to get an electric car or add an air conditioner or add a pool, or potentially decrease usage, you want to plan for the future so that the system's good for, you know, today, but also in the future as well. Once someone does sign up, we inspect the roof and make sure the roof is in good condition. Our roof warranty on the penetrations is normally 10 years. We extended that to 20 years as well. So if there's ever any kind of damage to the roof that was caused from the solar panels, Icon Power owns that for that 20-year period. And then, assuming the roof is in good shape, and we'll look at the electrical work to make sure that the main breaker can handle the backfeed breaker that would go in your electrical box. Then we submit those plans both to the city as well as APS. And once they both give the go-ahead, we can install it. Usually a solar install takes a day. If you do get a battery, that usually is going to take 2 days for the battery. And what's great about batteries, like Adrian mentioned, obviously it's a backup. If the grid goes out, you can still have power to the home. But especially in the winter months, the panels will stop producing during peak hours when it's more expensive with APS. So if you have a battery, you can program that, and when only during peak hours, only during that 4 to 7 window in the afternoon and evening, that if the solar panels are producing less than what you're using, or zero, then the battery would supplement and kick on and power the home during that window. And then it would stop at 7 o'clock, so that you don't, you know, discharge the whole battery, because the idea of it is if the grid goes down, you still have some battery backup and to power the home for that time. And then when the sun comes back up, solar will first power the home. And then as the solar produces more than you use in the morning, the excess will first go back to charging the battery. Once the battery is full, then it will start exporting to the grid if you're using less than what the solar is producing. Between installation and getting the solar turned on, usually is about a 2 to 3 week window. The first thing with the city would come out and inspect the solar that we installed to make sure it matches the permit we submitted. And then the final step with APS would come install that bi-directional meter that can go backwards and forwards. And so from start to finish, it's usually about a 4 to 5 week window from when you sign up to get the panels installed, and then about a 2 to 3 week window after that to get everything turned on. So about 8 weeks in total. Now is a great time, mainly because if you got your solar turned on late February to early March, that's about when the solar is going to start producing more than what your home is using, and so it can start to generate a credit on your APS bill right away. I'll stop there and kind of open up to questions that you guys might have that I didn't answer, or Adrian didn't answer, and happy to answer any questions you guys have.
How often do you have people ask to increase the size of their panel array?
Not very often. It does happen, but and we did have one actually from 2 co-ops ago that is added to join this co-op to add more panels to their home. So it's not super frequent, but it does happen. And that's kind of what we want to, when we analyze the usage, we also want to ask, good questions that could potentially plan for future usage. You can always add panels, you can't take them off. In general, it's probably easier to do it all at once. And if you're leaning towards more than less, I'd say do it now, because the pricing will be different in the future. It could be more, it could be less, but with the pricing that you guys got part of this co-op group, it'd be probably more beneficial to add them to maybe add a panel or two more than to try and do it in the future. So hopefully that answers your question.
Which type of roof is the easiest for you to install on? Flat pitched?
Probably a comp shingle roof. But we've installed on all types. The only ones we've installed on clay, not clay tile. That's the one we don't install on. Cement tile, flat roofs, comp shingle, and metal roofs. We'll install on all those types of roofs, which is comp shingle and tile is probably the most frequent in Phoenix. I'd say in the Flagstaff area, I don't see a lot of tile. But yeah, those are the 2 most we install on. Either one works though.
Okay.
I have a
Thanks, Rhett.
question. Oh, sorry. Jordan or Adrian. I have 2 questions. One is there a deadline that we would have to make a decision, yay or nay, to have this installation done? That's the first question. The second question is, can you explain the tax credit or tax rebate again, please?
Yeah, I think Adrian, correct me if I'm wrong, from when you meet with one of our reps, the proposal pricing is good for 30 days, right? The tax credit goes against, it's a dollar for dollar credit. It goes against your tax liability. So even better than a deduction. So if you use a TurboTax or if you have a CPA, they calculate, all your deductions that you have, that would help, lower your taxable income. And then whatever your tax liability is, that's where the tax credit comes into play. So I'll give you a couple scenarios. Let's say the tax credit is $10,000. For W-2 employees, taxes are taken out every other week on the paycheck. And let's say the government took $10,000 out of your paycheck between January to December, but after deductions, your tax liability is only $7,000. Well, they'd give you a $3,000 refund in that scenario, right? Now bring in the $10,000 tax credit, you can only get back what you've already paid.
Mm-hmm.
So if they took 10,000 out and gave you 3,000 back, they would also give you $7,000 back as well out of the $10,000 tax credit. And then the 3,000 that you have left over would roll over to the following year. If the government said, hey, we took 10,000 out of your paycheck, but you should have given us 15. So your tax liability is 15,000. In that scenario, the extra 5 that you would owe would be wiped out by the tax credit.
Mm-hmm.
And then they would send you $5,000 back because you already paid them 10. So
Okay,
it's just a dollar for dollar credit against your liability. And if you don't use it all in 1 year, that's okay. It will just roll over to subsequent years.
okay, that's the key question. The key thing is your tax liability, right? Dollar for dollar on your tax.
Correct.
Okay,
And it's not a rebate, so it's not guaranteed you get it.
Right.
So for some people, maybe a lease option that's, someone that has lots of kids and or low income, a lease option could be better because they might not be able to use the tax credit, or senior citizens who are retired and not have any taxable income. With the lease option, the solar company owns it, but the tax credits are already removed from the equation, and so the power that's produced from the panels will be at a discounted rate.
okay. Thank you. And you said 30 days after you've been, you met with a consultant, correct?
Yep.
Okay. Cool beans. Thank you.
And if you do get battery storage, you can get 30% tax credit on that too. And that's now the case if you just get battery storage. So you used to have to get them together. Now, if you go solar last year, this year you just get a battery, you can get 30% off that battery on your taxes.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and if you needed electrical upgrades or an EV charger, that's included in the total cost. And so the tax credit is 30%, whatever the total cost ends up being. And then, like Adrian mentioned, the state is 25%, but it's always just 1,000 because it's usually more than $4,000 cost, which is 25%. So
I have a question.
Jordan.
go ahead.
I was wondering on the proposal, is there a way to get a more itemized estimate of what that entails? Because it's my understanding right now is, so I've got the basic proposal that says what the cost would be, but it's not broken down in any way, in any manner to know what that all includes. And then there's the agreement, but does that need to be signed before somebody comes out and does a site assessment and has a better idea of what the full installation would include?
First question. So as far as the itemized for the solar itself, it's just broken down by watts. So we don't, hopefully you guys can't hear my kids yelling in the background. I got my office door locked with my AirPods in. So for the solar only, it's just based off of per watt. That includes the inverters, the installation, the warranty on the roof. And so the price per watt is $2.39 for the solar portion. So there's no itemization of the solar, the conduit, the inverters, the installation, if that's what you mean. For any additional items there is, so the battery would be $13,900, or a main panel upgrade would be $19,000 or $1950, I believe. So for just the solar, it's based off of how many watts are in the system that would determine the total cost for that. And then there is itemized for additional add-ons of an EV, a battery, stuff like that.
What about
That
just
help?
basic trenching, and is the per kilowatt, will that change if it's further away? So like, I'm not wanting to put it on my house, I want to put it on the garage.
Yeah, I think we bid $15 per foot on the trenching. Normally you charge 25.
Okay, so it sounds like,
And that,
sorry,
sorry,
go
go
ahead,
ahead.
Jordan.
I was just going to say that would be an item. So anything additional to the solar would be an itemized item that we could show price for. But
Okay.
the solar, for just the solar and the inverters and the installation of that, is just, it would be with the base panel that we offered, which is the 400 watt panel, would be $2.39 per watt. So to give you an idea, we typically charge about $3.10 per watt. So if you took a 10,000 watt system, that would normally cost $31,000. And for the co-op group, if you take 10,000 times 2.39, that's 23,900. So pretty significant discount compared to what we would typically charge. Because like kind of what we mentioned with the cost that are taken out of the equation there. You were going to ask another question. Is it Danae? Is that how you pronounce your name?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
right. And just in follow-up, so it sounds like a lot of the answers would be in that bid proposal. is that something that all members can have access to?
Yeah, I think if Adrian could be able to send that out as well, it just kind of shows exactly what we charged for the group. So it's kind of nice for our representatives too, because it say, hey, here's the price. I can't give you a better price, or I can't charge you more. It's already been determined. Here's the price. Just depends on how many panels and what kind of comes along with it. So pretty cut and dry. Yeah, if you want to reach out to Adrian, can probably send that to you.
Yeah, and all of the co-op members should have received at least a welcome letter and an offer details sheet from Icon Power, which has the list of all this pricing. Danae, I'll just resend you that right now so you have it handy. If anybody else doesn't have that though, please reach out to us and we'll get you that pricing sheet.
I think Jenny was maybe going to ask a question. Appreciate all the questions, by the way. So if you have one, please don't hesitate to ask.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
So I wanted to know how the solar panels do in the heavy snow. Do they shed it, or do you have to get up on the roof and shovel them?
Yeah, great question. My parents live in Utah, north of Salt Lake City. They have solar on their roof. So this is the only reason I know the answer to this question. But the snow on the solar will melt quite a bit quicker than the snow on your roof. And so the day it snows, that time what's cool is you have an app that you can see on your phone and monitor the production of your solar every day, week, month, and year, etc. So you'll be able to see if it's producing or not. But once the sun comes back out, the snow will melt quite a bit quicker than it will on your roof, and then it'll essentially, some of it will slide off probably, and some of it will just melt.
That's good.
So it could be probably within 24 to 48 hours of the snow getting melted off the solar, assuming it doesn't keep snowing.
Also, if we decide we want more solar panels, we had somebody come out and look at our roof, but nobody went up, and I didn't think it was very maybe thorough because we had snow on our roof. But will we have time to upgrade our panels after, or add more panels if we'd like, after we think about it?
Yeah, so once someone signs, that was kind of part of your question as well, Danae. So short answer is yes, to have our team come out and do what's called the site survey. We'd have you sign the Icon Power agreement. After the site survey, if we deem someone's roof is not in good shape, or we can't fit as many panels as maybe we thought, then if you change your mind after that, there's no penalty or cost associated. If someone says, yep, let's keep moving the ball forward and submit permit, then we start spending money on permits and buying equipment. So there would be a cancellation fee after that point. But to answer your question, Jenny, too, let's say you sign up for a 10 kilowatt system and we measure the roof and we put plans together for 10 kilowatts and you say, hey, I actually want to do 12. It's super easy to amend the plans and sign a change order form that says, okay, now you're getting 12 kilowatts. Here's the price based off of 12 kilowatts. And we'll just drop a new plan set. That happens fairly often. So between when you sign up to actually getting the plans back, if you haven't decided exactly how many panels you want, that's okay. If you're like, hey, I want to go, so that happened today. I did a video call with someone in the group and he couldn't decide if he wanted 1 or 2 batteries. He's leaning towards one. I said, well, just sign up today. We'll get the site survey scheduled. And particularly because he had a new home too, so we didn't have a great Google image. But then I said, well, we'll talk again in 2-3 weeks. And then from there, you can say, yeah, let's move forward with 1 or 2 or financing or cash. So nothing set in stone between when you sign up and get the plans back.
That sounds good. You were going to send Danae like a pricing sheet on all the different things. I'd like that too, and also all the specs of the things that were going to be installed, because I didn't quite get, I didn't feel like I got full specs on that quite yet.
So you mentioned someone from Icon already came out to your house. Is that what you mentioned before? Because of the snow, we couldn't get on the roof.
Yeah, I had the salesman come out.
Okay.
And then 2 guys came out and they looked in the attic. That was probably pretty essential. And they looked at the roof from down below, but they didn't go up because of the snow.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, Jenny, we'll send that to you right away.
Thank you very much.
Anybody else happy to answer any questions for you?
Yeah, just one in the chat. Does the agreement need to be signed in order to have the site survey done? And then the project can still be adjusted even though the agreement lists the size and price?
Short answer, yes, it does need to be signed, but then if we change the size, we would fill out a change, an amendment, a change order form. That would show a new price and a new system size. And it would state, hey, here's what the initial sign up was, all the the size and number of panels. And then it would say, here's what we're changing to, and it could be adding a battery or adding a main panel upgrade or something along those lines. I think Julio, you raised your hand.
Yes, hi. So I have a quick question. I have solar panels in my place, and I am new. I am new staff with Solar United Neighbors. So when you ask for a modification, does the utility company and the city inspector has to approve the modification? Let's say that you want to add solar panels to your array. Does the modification go again through the utility company and the city or town?
So you're saying if you already have solar, do we have to submit a new permit and submit to utility, correct? Is that what you're asking?
No, what I'm saying is the question was if you want to change the array, the design of your the modules, let's say you have 10 modules, you want to add 2 to 12 modules. So the question is if you want to do a modification, does city have to go through the utility company and the city for approval?
We typically like to review the design with our customers before we submit. If they say, hey, and so in that case, if we had plans for 10 and then added 2 more, then we would just change the plans to 12 and then submit. If we've already submitted to both, then yes, and there's a change in between there, right? If someone says, hey, I got 10 panels, we submit a permit. 2 weeks later, hey, I actually want 15. That's totally fine. We would just fill out a change order form and get new designs with 15 panels and then resubmit. One question we usually get a lot, what if my roof is not good enough shape? One thing you could do is do that simultaneously. If you are already maybe planning on getting a new roof, and with our financing too, if someone decides to finance it, you could roll the cost of the roof into the financing. So there'd be no upfront cost for the solar or for the roof. And then you'd have a payment that would be for both of those. And we have lots of roofing partners that could help get quotes. I know one of the members on the committee is planning on redoing his roof, but he already has a roofing company he works with, so he's going to use them.
We have a question. We're in Flagstaff and we have an east facing slope and a west facing slope. We were wondering what is the best breakdown for panels on each of those, particularly because we probably want the solar in the morning to heat our house as opposed to in the valley when you would cool your house in the evening.
Great question. So from January to December, east and west facing panels will produce probably about the same amount of kilowatt hours throughout the year. With APS, the peak hours and more expensive hours are between 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. And so how much the kilowatt hours produce is important, but when they're producing is more important. And so you'd want the panels to face west more than east. Now, APS in the morning is off peak. So it would be, if you didn't have any facing east and you were buying from APS, you'd be buying during their off peak time. But if you had panels only facing east and none facing west, you'd produce the solar when APS is cheap during off peak. but then you'd end up buying from them in the evening when it's more expensive. So you could do both. If there's enough room on the west side to produce more than 100% of your kilowatt hour usage, I would say go with the west. But if there's not enough on the west side, I'd say go with both options. They're both good. And if you ended up getting a battery too, what's nice is with the east panels, it would start charging the battery right away in the morning and powering the home as well. Hope that answered your question, Carrie.
Yeah, thank you.
We are right about at time. It's almost been an hour. Any last minute questions? Otherwise, I'm just gonna drop our email in the chat. Jordan, if you want to put your email in the chat, that'd be awesome too.
Sure. I have from Felly Waters is also on the call. So for those of you that are in the co-op, if she hasn't called you, she'll be calling you, reaching out already to set up a scheduled time and to meet with one of our energy consultants. In general, it's not always the case, but the plan that ends up working out well is the plan that has off peak of 5 cents, because the export rate with APS is 7.6 cents. Now that plan has the demand charge, but if we can have the panels facing west and have a lot of production between that 4 to 7 time, that helps reduce the demand charge. But then at nighttime and in the early morning, you're only paying 5 cents a kilowatt hour. So if you're charging your car, heating the home, like Carrie mentioned, then you're buying it at 5 cents, which is really cheap power. The average cost of power with APS between on peak and off peak is about 16 to 18 cents, depending on what your percentage of on peak power is. So if you can get your daytime power from the solar and a battery and only buy it from APS at 5 cents, that's a good way to structure it. The only catch, if you do go solar with the co-op group, is you have to babysit my kids once a week or once a month. So we got 5 little ones that we drop off at your house when we visit Flagstaff. That's just, hopefully that's not a deal breaker for some of you guys. I can
That's a
see
lot.
Gary, he's ready for it. He's like, all right, bring him on. Let's go.
More grandkids.
How old's the
All right, well,
youngest?
appreciate all your time. We have 5 between ages of 2 and 10. So we're in the thick of it.
Well, thanks for giving us an hour of your time tonight. We really appreciate it. Oh, Julio, did you have another question?
Oh yeah, just a reminder for people that if they have family, friends, or they know somebody in Southern Arizona, that we're launching a co-op in Tucson in March. Just as a reminder, if anybody knows somebody in Southern Arizona that is interested in going solar.
Cool.
Awesome.
Thank you all so much.
Appreciate it, guys.
Great rest of your
Thank
night.
you.